She is standing at the sink at 2 in the morning, trying to wash blood from her hands. Her uniform is torn at the collar, her face is bruised, one eye is beginning to swell shut. The chandeliers above her burn like nothing is wrong. Beautiful, completely indifferent, throwing warm gold light across marble counters and polished floors, while this woman bleeds quietly at the sink. The staff can see her, the chef frozen near the stove, 2 housekeepers pressed against the far counter, 3 suited security men at the wall, eyes fixed on everything except her face. Not one of them moves. Welcome, family. Before this story goes one step further, have you ever been surrounded by people and still felt completely alone? Drop your answer in the comments right now, and hold this question close. If the man you believed was responsible for your father's death turned out to be the only thing standing between you and whoever came next, would you trust him, or would you run? Keep that answer. It will change before this story is over. The rear door opens. Han Ji-wook walks in wearing all black, collar to boots, with Tae-kyu and 3 armed men right behind him. He has just come from something that went wrong near the port. His jaw is set. He is speaking Korean, low and measured, giving instructions the way a man does when he has never once in his life needed volume to be obeyed. And then his eyes move across the kitchen and find Megan at the sink. He stops mid-sentence. The room changes. No drama, no announcement. The air just shifts the way it always shifts when the most powerful person in a space decides that something in front of him matters more than everything else. He looks at his men. One word. Everyone clears out. Tae-kyu guides the last employee through the service door and closes it quietly from the outside. Ji-wook walks to the main door and locks it. Then he reaches beneath his shirt. Megan's breath stops. He places the gun flat on the marble counter, both hands visible and open. He does not come around to her side. He waits. Megan watches his reflection in the dark window above the sink. Tall, tattooed, completely still. And she tells herself that fear is a choice. That she has not spent 11 weeks inside this estate just to fall apart right now. That this man may be the exact reason her father never came home. Then Ji-wook walks around the island and stops on the other side, close enough that she catches cold air and rain still coming off his jacket. He doesn't reach for her. He doesn't demand anything. He just looks. The torn collar, the bruise spreading along her jaw, the blood still darkening beneath her skin. And when he finally speaks, his voice barely crosses the marble between them. Who did this? Megan turns off the water. She turns around. She looks directly at the man she spent 11 weeks building a case to destroy. Why did your family kill my father? The kitchen goes absolutely still. Something crosses Ji-wook's face. Not guilt, not the cold wall she braced herself for. Something quieter. Something that tells her the ground beneath everything she planned has just shifted in a direction she hasn't charted. He knows that name. He has seen it written in a private ledger that was never meant to be found. A ledger recovered on the very night his own father died. What Megan cannot know yet, standing there with blood drying under her nails, is that Ji-wook did not hire her by accident. He has been waiting 11 weeks for her to say that name out loud. Go back. 11 weeks. A man walks out of a downtown Los Angeles office building, carrying a cardboard box, a child's photograph tucked inside it, and 2 decades of honest work being erased on the evening news, before anyone gets a chance to hear his side of anything. That is where this story begins. The news clip runs for 30 seconds. Megan watches it 11 times. A black man in a dark navy shirt, broad-shouldered, unhurried, carrying a cardboard box through the lobby of a downtown Los Angeles building with a leather bag across one shoulder. Inside the box, clear to anyone watching, a framed photograph of a little girl with ribbons in her hair, a coffee mug, a plant that didn't survive its final week in a building that had already decided it was finished with him. A woman in a green blazer stands near the exit with her arms folded. She watches him leave. No expression, no word, nothing that anyone could later point to and call a reaction. The lobby is full of people. Nobody moves. The news crawler reads, "Port auditor dismissed amid internal compliance review. That man is Johnny Patrick, Megan's father." She understands the moment she sees that clip that this is not a termination. It is a message. Someone needed the world to watch Johnny walk out before he could speak to anyone about what he had found. Needed his name attached to the word dismissed before a single person thought to ask what he had been investigating, or why the answer frightened people with real authority. Johnny Patrick spent 22 years as a senior compliance auditor at the Port of Los Angeles. He taught Megan to read financial records the way other people read expressions, not what the numbers say, but what they are arranged to hide. On Sunday afternoons at Odessa's dining table, while old Marvin Gaye records played low from the kitchen, and the house smelled of red beans and smoked turkey, her father would open a ledger and ask her one question, not what is wrong, what is missing. The absence, he always said, is louder than the presence. 3 weeks before the news clip appears, Johnny calls Megan from a number she does not recognize. He sounds controlled, deliberate, each word chosen before he opens his mouth. He tells her that several containers registered to Han Global Logistics have been logging impossible weights. Heavier entering restricted storage, lighter coming out. The customs paperwork is clean. The recorded physics are not. Someone, he believes, is running cargo through legitimate shipping lanes that has no business crossing American soil. Then he says, "The family is not the organization. Remember that." She asks what it means. He tells her he has to go. That is the last time they speak. 6 days later, Johnny Patrick is found dead in a downtown parking structure. Single gunshot. Police rule it a robbery because his wallet and watch are missing. Except Megan knows he hadn't worn that watch in 3 years, not since the clasp broke, and he never carried more than $40 in cash. Nobody challenges the ruling. Within weeks, documents surface online linking Johnny's name to the same shipping irregularities he had been investigating. His reputation is destroyed while he is still in the ground, methodically, efficiently, in a way that required preparation long before his body was cold. Megan goes after the documents herself. She pulls restricted port records through her employer's system, building the case her father never got to finish. 3 days later, a cardboard box appears on her own desk. History recognizes its patterns. She carries the investigation to Odessa's dining table and keeps working. Her grandmother feeds her, watches her, and one evening sits across from her with both hands flat on the surface and speaks with the precision of a woman who has lived long enough to know the difference between justice and destruction. A house will tell you what kind of people live in it, baby. Pay attention to what nobody touches. Megan pays attention. She follows the black crane symbol, recurring across the damaged fragments of her father's flash drive, through property records, shell corporations, port security contracts, and private foundations, until every path resolves at the same name, Han Ji-wook. She creates a false employment history and applies for a domestic position at his Beverly Hills estate. 48 hours later, faster than any logic can explain, she is hired. She tells herself the door opened by accident. On her first night inside the estate, she slips into Han Sok-gil's partially open office and stops cold at what she finds in a half-open desk drawer. A photograph, her father, younger, standing near the port beside a man Megan has never seen in any of Johnny's files. Her hands begin to shake. Across the estate, inside a darkened room lined with security monitors, Han Ji-wook sits back in his chair and watches the footage of Megan holding that photograph. Her real resume lies open on the desk in front of him. He knew exactly who she was before she ever rang the bell. She counts it 3 times before she trusts what she is seeing. Ji-wook rises from his chair whenever Megan enters the room. The first time, she tells herself he was already standing, already in motion, already on his way somewhere, that the timing means nothing and she is reading too much into the movements of a man who controls a criminal network stretching from Busan to the Californian coast and has no reason to register domestic staff as anything worth a gesture. The second time, Taekyu sees it. He does not comment. He registers it the way careful men register things that will matter. No expression, no acknowledgement, just the clean filing away of information that doesn't belong in any existing category. The third time, Han Sok-gil sees it. And Sok-gil is not the kind of man who files things quietly. 9 days into her time at the estate, Ji-wook hosts a formal dinner. Korean shipping investors, port executives, Corinne Vale in a tailored cream suit, seated mid-table where she can hear everything and be read as less than she is. Sok-gil at Ji-wook's left, silver-haired, composed, performing the role of dignified family elder with the fluency of a man who has rehearsed it for 30 years. Megan moves along the far side of the table, pouring wine, keeping her presence small. Then the hired translator opens his mouth and says something that did not happen. An older Korean investor speaks carefully about container 714. His words are chosen. He says the cargo cannot be cleared because workers near the bay reported sounds coming from inside a sealed section. He uses the word alive. He uses the word frightened. The translator looks at Ji-wook and says the container has been delayed because of damaged refrigeration equipment. Megan's hand tightens around the neck of the wine bottle. She has enough Korean to follow a real conversation. She learned it over 3 years from evening classes in Koreatown, from courtroom recordings studied while building financial fraud cases, from what accumulates naturally when men speak in front of a woman they have already decided cannot follow along. She understood every word that investor said, and she understands every word the translator just replaced. Container 714. That number lives in her father's notes. She sets the wine bottle down on the table. If she speaks, her cover is finished. Ji-wook will know she understands Korean. Seok-gil will start asking questions she cannot answer. 11 weeks of work collapses in 60 seconds. But somewhere at the port of Los Angeles, there are people inside a sealed container whose only chance of being found tonight depends on someone in this room telling the truth. Right here, before we find out what Megan does, I need to ask you something. If you were standing in that dining room with everything you worked for on the line, what would you have chosen? Stay silent to protect yourself? Or speak and burn your cover to the ground to save people you've never met? Tell me in the comments. Because the decision Megan makes in the next 10 seconds is going to follow her through every step of this story. Megan looks at Seok-gil. Then she looks at Ji-wook. The translation isn't accurate, she says, voice level and clear. The investor didn't mention refrigeration. He said voices were heard inside the container. He used the word frightened. The dining room goes silent. Seok-gil's expression does not change. His voice drops to a register below courtesy. Remove her. 2 security men push back their chairs. Ji-wook says one word. Stay. Both men sit back down. Ji-wook turns directly to the investor and speaks Korean, cutting the translator out of the conversation entirely. The dinner ends 40 minutes early. Corinne Vale leaves without a word. The guests go without pleasantries. By morning, federal vehicles are lined outside a container terminal at the port of Los Angeles. Officers cut through container 714 and find a false wall built between legitimate freight and the container's outer shell. Behind it, 11 people. Frightened, dehydrated, alive. That night, Ji-wook finds Megan alone in the kitchen. No guards follow him in. He stops on the opposite side of the marble island and studies her with the focused attention of a man encountering something that refuses to fit into any category he already owns. Where did you learn Korean? Megan looks up from the counter. From men who assumed I couldn't understand them. Something in his expression moves, just barely. The near cousin of a smile that doesn't quite arrive. He steps closer. The kitchen is empty. The hour is past midnight. The island is the only reasonable boundary left between them. Did you know who I was before you spoke? Megan holds his gaze without looking away. I knew you were the man everyone in that room was too afraid to correct. He holds the moment for a long beat. Then he steps back, not quickly, with the unhurried movement of a man making a deliberate choice, and walks toward the door. Behind the estate walls, Seok-gil sits across from Corinne Vale, in a room with no cameras. He turns a pen slowly between 2 fingers. Her father walked into this organization asking the same questions, he says. Corinne waits. He believed knowing the truth made him difficult to kill. The sentence finishes itself. Neither of them needs to say the rest. The reassignment arrives the morning after the dinner, and the reason Ji-wook gives Tae-kyu is translation. Evening service on the private office floor. Useful during late international calls, Ji-wook says. Tae-kyu relays it without expression, which tells Megan everything an expression would have. She understands what the reassignment actually means. He wants her where he can watch her. She accepts it because his office floor is precisely where she has been trying to get for 9 days. Both of them understand the arrangement perfectly. Neither one of them names it. The first night, Megan leaves a glass of sweet tea outside his office door at 10:30. She sets it down without knocking and walks back toward the kitchen without looking behind her. When she passes the door 90 minutes later, the glass is gone. The second night, An empty glass is already sitting at the exact spot before she arrives to place a new one. No note, no word, just the glass, rinsed and set where she left it the night before. Neither of them ever says a single thing about it. This is how it starts between them. Not with a declaration, not with anything dramatic or confessable. Just a glass of sweet tea left outside a locked door in a house full of people who perform loyalty and conceal everything real. And the fact that it keeps being taken means more than either of them is willing to say out loud. 4 days later, Ji-wook walks into the kitchen just before midnight with a deep cut across his right palm. He rolls his sleeve back, stands at the counter, and waits while blood traces a slow line toward his wrist. Megan is the only other person in the room. She tells him he needs stitches. He says no, doctor. She doesn't argue. She brings antiseptic, gauze, and tweezers from the supply cabinet and works on the cut with the calm, steady precision of someone who handles crisis without making it a performance. She removes a piece of glass from just below the second knuckle, and the care she brings to that single action makes Ji-wook go completely still. He watches her hands, not the wound, her hands. "Do you normally let employees touch you?" Megan asks without looking up. "No," Ji-wook answers. The word sits in the middle of the kitchen like something heavy placed down with intention. She finishes the bandage and steps back. He rolls down his sleeve, picks up his jacket from the counter, and walks out without turning around. No thank you. She didn't expect one. What remains in the kitchen after he leaves is more significant than anything that was spoken. 3 nights later, Ji-wook hosts a closed gathering. Organization leaders, a port executive, a man who arrives without luggage from overseas and leaves before dawn. Megan moves through the room, pouring drinks, staying present and invisible at the same time. Then she notices the blood. Spreading beneath Ji-wook's right cuff, the wound has reopened, and across the table, 2 organization leaders are watching him with the particular measuring attention of men who are always cataloging the first sign that whoever sits above them is losing ground. Megan crosses the room without being summoned. She steps close at Ji-wook's side, angled so her body blocks the table's sightline, and presses her palm flat against the inside of his wrist, working the cuff button closed over the stain with her free hand while the other refills his glass. 4 seconds, maybe 5. Ji-wook closes his hand around hers. 1 deliberate second. He releases her and continues talking without a pause, as though a woman didn't just step in front of his vulnerability and quietly close it off from the room, as though he didn't just close his hand around her wrist and hold it long enough to mean something. Megan walks away. Her pulse doesn't settle for the rest of the evening. The next afternoon, Ji-wook finds her alone in the pantry. He doesn't enter. He fills the doorway. His body is not threatening, but it is not neutral either. He carries the specific stillness of a man who has learned that the absence of movement says more than motion ever could. "You look at locked doors," he says, "like they owe you answers." Megan meets his eyes directly. "You look at people like they owe you obedience." He steps inside. She catches cold air and rain on his jacket. The space between them becomes its own conversation. "Are you afraid of me?" Megan doesn't flinch. "I'm afraid of what I might find out." He holds her gaze for 3 full seconds. Then he steps back, because she has not invited him forward, and he is completely aware of it. That single step backward stays with Megan long after the pantry goes empty. That night, she is summoned to his private study. Her damaged flash drive sits in the center of his desk. Ji-wook looks at her from across the room. His expression carries something that does not fit neatly inside either apology or warning. "Megan Patrick," he says. Her real name, spoken out loud. Her cover is gone. He slides a leather-bound ledger slowly across the desk toward her, and when he speaks again, something in his voice sounds like a man who has carried a thing alone for far too long. "Help me find the person who killed both our fathers." Megan doesn't believe him. She stands across the desk with the ledger in her hands, and 11 weeks of grief and calculated suspicion sitting plainly in the set of her jaw. Ji-wook's claim that their fathers were killed by the same person sounds exactly like the most elegant kind of lie, the kind a very intelligent man builds when he needs to redirect blame without appearing to try. She tells him that directly. Ji-wook nods once, the expression of a man who expected nothing warmer. She agrees to examine the ledger because it may hold evidence she needs. Not because she trusts him. She tells him that too. Without softening it, he says, "Good." That single word does something she wasn't expecting. She files it away and says nothing. Their arrangement runs completely off the record. During the day, Megan continues working throughout the estate, cleaning, serving, maintaining every surface appearance of a woman who notices nothing and expects less. At night, she sits in Ji-wook's private study and works through coded financial records while he monitors calls from the adjacent room. They are not partners. They are not at peace. They exist in some tense, unnamed space between those two things, and neither one is willing to define it. What develops between them doesn't look like anything most people would recognize. Ji-wook begins keeping a second coffee mug on his desk without mentioning it. Black, no sugar, though Megan stated her preference exactly once, in a conversation that lasted 90 seconds and was about something else entirely. She starts leaving a covered plate outside the office on nights when the calls run late. It always returns to the dish rack before morning, clean and quietly placed, as though the gesture can only survive if it stays unofficial. 3 times that week, Sok-gil makes remarks about Megan within Ji-wook's hearing. Precise and cutting, the kind designed to perform casual contempt while actually delivering a message about what certain people in a house are and are not worth. Each time, Ji-wook says nothing. Each time, the silence that follows grows colder than the one before it. Inside the financial records, Megan finds something worse than she was prepared for. The organization has been using legitimate West Coast freight companies to move what she privately starts calling ghost cargo, containers processed through the port under the licenses of businesses that dissolved years ago. The manifests are clean, the customs documentation holds under standard review, but go 3 layers deeper, into the amendment logs and access histories, and the entire structure gives way. Someone altered the records after her father's death. The alterations are visible in the file metadata if you know exactly what to look for, and Megan absolutely knows. Timestamps that appear before the filing dates they claim to follow. Access entries from a port security terminal that officially closed 18 months ago, yet the logs show it active for 7 consecutive days 3 weeks after the recorded closure. Impossible. Unless someone held a key they were never asked to return. Her father had been right about all of it, and someone invested serious resources in making sure the world never found that out. Ji-wook reviews her findings at 2 a.m, standing over the desk while Megan walks him through the amendment layers column by column. His face doesn't change, but his jaw tightens at the altered timestamps in a way that tells her this is not confirmation of something he already had. It's new information. He was genuinely ignorant. That lands harder than guilt would have. A power failure cuts through part of the estate on a Thursday night. The kitchen drops into warm amber under the emergency lighting. Megan does what she always does when the world gets too heavy to carry quietly. She cooks. Odessa's Creole red beans and rice, smoked turkey, skillet cornbread from a recipe so deep in her memory it lives in her hands rather than her mind. She moves through the dim kitchen and for the first time in 11 weeks, she is not performing anything for anyone. Ji-wook walks in while the beans are at a low simmer. He doesn't announce himself. He sits down at the island the way a man sits when he has given up managing his own presence for the night, and watches her move through the kitchen with an attention that is entirely different from how he watches everything else. She places a bowl in front of him without a word. He tastes it. Something passes across his face. Quick, unguarded. The kind of expression that arrives before a person decides whether to let it show. "My mother cooked," he says. Not that this reminds him of it. Just the fact, placed down plainly. Before she left, when I was 13. Megan tells him about Sunday afternoons at Odessa's house. Marvin Gaye, low on the record player. Her father beside her at the table, pointing at ledger columns and asking what was missing, rather than what was wrong. Ji-wook listens the way a man listens when he has been talked at for a very long time, and has finally been offered conversation instead. "Do you believe she actually chose to leave?" Megan asks. His answer comes without pause. Belief was never required. The amber light holds them both for a moment. Neither of them names what is building between them in that kitchen. The next morning, Sok-gil finds Megan alone in the east corridor and places a photograph on the side table beside her. Calm, unhurried. The particular composure of a man delivering a verdict he has been carrying for some time. The photograph shows Johnny Patrick accepting an envelope from a man Megan recognizes as a known criminal intermediary with port connections. Sok Gil tells her, without raising his voice, without any visible emotion, that her father was not a victim, that Johnny had been part of the operation from the beginning, and only moved against it when he was refused a larger share of what it produced. Megan rejects it instantly, but she recognizes the location in the photograph. It was taken directly outside her former office building in downtown Los Angeles. She examines the image metadata that night and finds annotation markers buried in the financial notations visible in the photograph's background, a shorthand notation style she developed herself, a system that existed on exactly one device, her personal laptop. Someone entered her apartment before she ever applied for this position. Before she came for them, they came for her first. And the security company listed in her building's monitoring contract, the one holding access to every hallway camera, every entry log, every record of who moved past her front door, belongs to Han Ji-wook. The door at the bottom of the concealed staircase is already unlocked when Megan reaches it. She notices that detail too late. The records room below the estate's west wing smells like cold air and old paper. Filing cabinets run the full length of one wall. A desk in the center holds a lamp throwing pale light across stacked folders. Megan pulls the second cabinet from the left, the one whose lock disengages with a pressure technique she spent 2 weeks identifying, and starts photographing records with her phone. She has been inside for 4 minutes when she realizes the lamp was already on when she entered. Han Sok-gil steps out from the shadow at the far end of the room. He is holding nothing. He doesn't need to. The 2 men who walk in behind him are enough. Megan Patrick. He says her name the way a man says something he has been saving for the right moment. Your father wore the same expression when I found him somewhere he wasn't supposed to be. Megan keeps her voice level. You knew him. I knew what he was worth, Sok-gil says quietly, which is the same thing you are worth, exactly as much as you are useful. He tells her everything, that Ji-wook hired her as bait, that her presence inside the estate was designed to draw out Johnny's surviving contacts, people who would surface the moment they believed she was getting close to the real evidence, that every step she thought she was taking forward was a path someone else built and marked in advance. She has not been investigating Han Ji-wook. She has been working for him. Sok-gil asks for the original flash drive. She refuses. His expression stays composed. He nods once. The 2 men grab both her arms and pin her against the filing cabinet. Sok-gil adjusts the cuff of his shirt, steps forward, and strikes her across the left side of her face. His ring opens a cut beneath her cheekbone. He leans close and speaks in the tone of a man delivering logistics rather than threats. Odessa, her home, the people she trusts through her front door, all of it reducible, he says, to organizational tools. Megan drives her heel down hard into the right guard's foot. She twists left, uses the second guard's own weight against his balance, and is across the room before either man recovers. The fire alarm panel is mounted beside the door. She hits it with her open palm without slowing down. The alarm tears through the entire estate. She runs. She makes it to the kitchen before her legs begin to disagree with her. She is standing at the sink at 2 a.m, trying to wash blood from her hands, when the rear door opens. Ji-wook stops mid-sentence when his eyes find her across the kitchen. The room empties. The door locks. The gun goes on the counter. He asks who did this, and Megan turns around and asks why his family killed her father, and something in his face breaks open. Not guilt, not a rehearsed wall, something that looks like a man meeting a question he has been carrying toward for a very long time. He tells her the truth, all of it. He knew she was Johnny's daughter before she ever rang the bell. He accessed her personal device. He monitored her apartment. He watched her build her investigation, and then opened the estate's door and let her walk in. Protection, he calls it. He says he placed himself between her and the people who would have come for her the same way they came for Johnny. Megan looks at him across the marble island. You protected the bait, she says, because you still needed it alive. Ji-wook does not answer. That silence confirms everything an answer would have. He reaches toward her face to look at the cut beneath her eye. Don't, she says. His hand stops immediately. No argument, no reaching further. The restraint in that single stop gesture is somehow more devastating than anything that has passed between them yet. because it tells her he is capable of control even when everything in him is pulling toward her. She goes upstairs and packs her bag. At the estate gate, in the 30 seconds between the inside and the outside, a housekeeper named Rochelle Price appears at her right shoulder. Rochelle is quiet, deliberate, a woman who has worked the estate's east wing for 7 years and has never once approached Megan directly. She presses a folded piece of paper into Megan's palm and walks back toward the service entrance without turning around. Megan unfolds it under the gate light. 3 words in handwriting that has been trembling for a long time. He took my sister. Megan turns around at the gate. She does not go back inside for Ji-wook. She is clear about that in her own mind before her feet move. She goes back because Suk-gil has been doing this to more people than her father, and the evidence needed to stop him permanently is still somewhere inside this estate, and she is the only person positioned to find it. She finds Ji-wook in his study and places Rochelle's note on his desk without a word. He reads it. His jaw tightens with the specific anger of a man discovering that damage occurred inside his house, on a scale he was not aware of. He already knows Rochelle Price's name. He knows her face, and her years of service, and the quiet way she has moved through his household. What he did not know, until this moment, is what Suk-gil has been using those 7 years to take from her. Megan pulls the chair across from him and sits down, not because he offered it, because she is finished asking permission for the space she occupies. "I'm staying," she says. "Not for you. Because Suk-gil has been doing this to more people than my father, and the evidence that stops him is in this building. But I need you to hear my conditions and answer them honestly." Ji-wook folds his hands on the desk. She names them plainly. Full access to every financial record in the estate's restricted system. The freedom to leave the grounds at any hour without being followed or monitored. Direct communication with Taekyu. Every surveillance device removed from her private room. No decision involving her safety made without her knowledge and consent first. She stops talking and waits. Ji-wook holds her gaze across the desk for a long moment. "Agreed," he says. It is the first time in the history of this estate that he has accepted conditions from someone inside his own walls. She files that away and says nothing. Past midnight, a knock comes at her door. Ji-wook stands in the hallway with a medical kit. He asks if he may come in. She steps back. He sits at the chair near the window and opens the kit and begins cleaning the cut along her temple with the focused attention of a man doing 2 things simultaneously. Tending a wound and pressing himself up against a boundary he has no language for yet. He asks before he touches her. Each time, Megan watches his hands while he works. The tattoos across his forearm, the tension running just beneath the surface of him. She reads him the way she reads financial records, not what shows on top, but what the arrangement underneath reveals. "I still want you," she says. He goes completely still. "I also don't trust you. I need you to know both of those things are true at the same time, and that one does not cancel the other." Ji-wook's hands stay where they are. His voice, when it comes, is quiet in the way that things are quiet when all performance has been removed. "I know." She asks whether that bothers him. The beat before his answer is longer than usual. More than it should. She turns her face before the distance between them closes. He does not push forward. He closes the kit, stands, walks to the door. She doesn't call him back. The room after he leaves holds the specific weight of something that almost became something else. The following morning, Taekyu appears at her door without announcement and without Ji-wook. He stands in the hallway with the posture of a man who has kept his own counsel through 15 years of things that would have broken most people, and when he speaks, it carries the quiet weight of a decision that has been building for a very long time. "I gave your father information," he says. "Port schedules, container access logs, security rotations. I passed it through a third party for 2 years before he was killed." Megan does not move. "I have a recording, audio, made the night your father died." He names Seok-gil directly. He names the route, the contacts, the chain of authorization. Taekyu places a drive on the table beside her door. "There is a woman's voice on it. She was giving your father instructions on where to hide the evidence. She knew the organization from the inside." He pauses. "I have not told Ji-wook about the recording because of who the voice belongs to." He leaves. Megan brings the drive to Ji-wook that same night. They listen from the beginning. Johnny's voice fills the room, careful, frightened in the way controlled people get frightened, choosing each word before releasing it. They listen to the sounds behind him, the tension in his breathing, the weight of a man who understands he is running out of time. Then the woman's voice comes through. Ji-wook's entire body goes rigid. Megan turns around slowly. His face has taken on the look of someone watching the ground disappear beneath a story they have lived inside their entire life. That voice, Megan says carefully, is my mother, Ji-wook answers. Hyerin, the woman he was told abandoned the family when he was 13 years old, the disappearance that was explained away and buried under 2 decades of silence, was alive. She had been feeding information to Johnny from inside the organization. She had been working against the Black Crane from a position no one would have suspected, and there is no record of where she went after the night Johnny died. Ji-wook's fingers stop near Megan's throat. He is holding a concealed microphone the size of a shirt button, working it into the fabric just below the neckline of her collar, and the air in the study has gone entirely still, not from tension, from the specific weight of 2 people in a room who have run out of space to pretend the thing building between them belongs to some other category. "May I?" he asked before reaching for her collar. She said yes. The evidence from Taekyu's recording and Megan's financial decryption has converged on a single point: a private auction running beneath a sealed section of the Port of Los Angeles. Seok-gil has been building toward it for months. Compromised shipping routes, stolen defense technology, witness identities, custom system passwords, port bribery files, everything packaged for buyers who have already been invited and will not be leaving paper trails. It runs tonight. Ji-wook needs the event documented in real time, buyers identified, evidence transmitted to law enforcement while he is standing in the room so that nothing can be buried before it is preserved. Megan's accounting background and Korean fluency make her the only person who can enter beside him as his financial advisor and follow every conversation as it happens. She is also the only person Seok-gil has been watching since the fire alarm 3 nights ago. They both understand this completely. Ji-wook finishes securing the microphone and steps back. Something in his expression is open in a way his face almost never allows, stripped of the authority he normally wears between himself and anything he cannot afford to lose. "What happens if I don't come back from this?" Megan asks. "You come back," Ji-wook says. "Is that an order?" He holds the silence for 1 beat. "No." "Then what is it?" He opens his mouth, closes it. Whatever the word is, it lives in a territory he does not have a map for. Megan watches the language fail him and understands in that moment that whatever she has become to this man, it has already traveled past anything he knows how to navigate safely. She kisses him. It begins carefully, almost like a question. Then 11 weeks of grief and restraint and anger and wanting pour into it, and it becomes something else entirely. His hands move to her face. He kisses her back with the kind of intensity that only exists in a person who has been controlling every room they enter for so long they have forgotten what it feels like to simply let something happen. He is the one who ends it, because the port is waiting and 30 minutes is not enough margin. The sealed terminal is underground and cold. Ji-wook enters with Megan at his side and Taekyu 3 steps behind. Seok-gil is already seated at the far end of the arrangement, silver-haired, composed, performing the role of composed authority. He registers Megan the moment she walks in. His eyes move from her face to Ji-wook and back, and his jaw tightens with the cold displeasure of a man watching a variable step outside the column where he placed it. Megan works through the room with precision. She photographs documentation on the presented terminals while appearing to review logistics. She cross-references shell company names she spent days decrypting against the access files displayed on the auction screens, building a complete evidence chain in real time. She captures buyer identities, authorization chains, and direct transaction links while standing 3 feet from the man who destroyed her father. Then Taekyu draws his weapon and points it directly at Ji-wook. The terminal goes silent. Taekyu disarms Ji-wook's security personnel, moves to Seok-gil's side, and begins escorting the older man toward the sealed exit at the far end of the terminal. Ji-wook stands completely still. "Before this story takes another step, I need you to stop right here." Taekyu has protected Ji-wook for 15 years. He gave Megan's father information at personal risk for 2 years, while keeping it secret from everyone. Now he is pointing a weapon at the man he has spent 15 years standing beside. Is this the night loyalty finally broke? Or is Taekyu doing something that can only work if it looks exactly like what it looks like? Drop your answer in the comments right now, because the next 30 seconds are about to divide everyone watching. Sok-gil moves toward the exit with Taekyu at his side. Then container 714 opens. Inside, stacked behind a false cargo wall, are Johnny Patrick's original office records, the physical documents removed from evidence storage and presumed destroyed. And standing beside them in the thin light of the opened container is a man federal records declared dead 14 months ago. He looks directly at Ji-wook. His voice is hollow and certain. You signed the first shipment yourself. The accusation lands in the terminal, like something that rewrites the room's air pressure. Ji-wook does not move. Every armed man in the space is watching him, measuring the distance between those words and whatever answer follows. The witness steps forward from the open container. A port subcontractor named Elwood Reese, 53 years old, thinner than any photograph of him, walking like a man whose legs are remembering what space feels like. But his eyes are clear. His voice holds. Transaction 4471B, Elwood says. Authorization date, your signature. The first container cleared through the compromised route. Sok-gil sees the moment shift and makes his move. He grabs Megan from behind, one arm across her collarbone, a weapon appearing from inside his jacket and pressing against her ribs. Destroy the files, Sok-gil says to Ji-wook, his voice carrying the absolute calm of a man who has used this particular kind of pressure many times. Every record she transmitted. Call it back now, or she leaves this terminal in a way that ends the conversation permanently. The terminal holds its breath. Ji-wook looks at Megan. Megan gives him the smallest, most deliberate shake of her head. He does not reach for a phone. He does not reach for anything. No, Ji-wook says. Sok-gil's grip tightens. Megan drives her elbow backward hard into his ribs, drops all her weight in one motion, and twists out of the hold before his grip can readjust. She hits the floor, rolls, comes up running toward the port access terminal on the far wall. Her hands find the keyboard before Sok-gil's men reach her position. She uploads the complete financial archive to 4 separate receiving addresses in under 40 seconds. Federal investigators, 2 journalists, a victims' rights attorney, and a private secure server she built from Odessa's dining table months ago. Then she pulls up the port's internal access system and locks every sealed exit Sok-gil's men are moving toward, one by one, until nobody is going anywhere they haven't already been authorized to enter. Taekyu, who walked Sok-gil not toward freedom, but directly into a sealed section of terminal where law enforcement had been positioned for the past 20 minutes, the actual plan arranged between him and Ji-wook before the auction ever began, delivers Sok-gil to federal officers with his hands already in motion. Rochelle's sister, Deja Price, is found in a locked holding room adjacent to the container bay, along with 3 other witnesses Sok-gil had been using as sustained leverage against people who might otherwise have talked. All 4 of them are alive. Deja walks out of that room and straight into her sister's arms 2 hours later on the terminal floor, and the sound Rochelle makes is one that Megan will carry in her chest for years. Sok-gil is arrested at the port. Corinne Vale is taken into federal custody at the airport 14 minutes later, seated in a first-class departure lounge with a bag containing 3 different names across 3 different sets of documents: the shell corporations, the falsified customs access, the manufactured evidence against Johnny, the bribery payments moving through legitimate freight accounts. All of it surfaces publicly over the following days, released in organized, documented layers that leave no room for legal maneuver. Johnny Patrick's name is formally cleared by the compliance authority. His personnel file is corrected on the public record. The robbery ruling on his death is reopened as a homicide investigation, with named persons of interest and active federal cooperation. Megan reads the formal statement on her phone in Odessa's living room, and does not cry until the 3rd paragraph. Odessa sits beside her the entire time, with one hand resting on her back, saying nothing at all, because she is a woman who understands that some moments do not require improvement. Ji-wook releases internal financial records that cost his companies significant port contracts and reduce his operational reach in ways that will take years to rebuild. He makes no public statement, He quietly establishes a restitution fund through a subsidiary that connects back to him only if you examine the right 3 layers of corporate documentation. No press release, no announcement, no credit claimed in any direction. Megan finds it 3 days later, the only way Ji-wook likely intended her to find it, by reading the numbers. She returns to the estate at dawn on a Thursday and goes directly to the kitchen. She makes cornbread from memory while Ji-wook stands at the entrance and watches her move through a space she first entered as someone he had already identified and someone who had come to bring him down. He crosses the room and stands beside her at the island. He places Johnny's recovered watch on the counter in front of her, then steps back and bows. Slow, full, head low, in a gesture that a man who bows to no one offers only when the word he is reaching for does not exist yet in any language he owns. Megan watches him. The kitchen is warm. The morning sits quietly outside the windows. It feels, for one impossibly brief moment, like the end of something. Her phone buzzes. An email notification. The sender address belongs to her father's private account. The subject line reads, "If you are reading this, it worked." The email was set to send the moment Han Seok-gil's name entered federal arrest records. Megan opens it at the kitchen table, while Ji-wook is still standing at the island behind her. One attachment, a video file. She plays it. Johnny Patrick appears on screen at a desk she recognizes as the back office of a storage facility in Inglewood. Gray work jacket, reading glasses pushed up on his forehead. He looks directly into the camera with the expression of a man who has already made peace with what he is about to say, and understands clearly that he may not survive to say it any other way. Megan. His voice is steady. If this reached you, Seok-gil is in custody, which means you finished what I couldn't. I am so proud of you, baby girl. Megan's throat closes entirely. But there is something you need to understand, Johnny continues, leaning slightly forward. Seok-gil did not build this alone. When the original route was created, the first Container 714 authorization, there was a signature on that paperwork. It was not Seok-gil's. He pauses for exactly 1 second. It belonged to Ji-wook. Behind Megan, Ji-wook goes completely still. I have never been able to confirm what he understood about what was being shipped at the time he signed, Johnny says, his voice careful and measured. But his authorization created the route that Seok-gil built everything else on top of. Ask him directly, Megan, and listen to what he doesn't say as closely as what he does. Ji-wook moves slowly into the room. His own face reflects back at him from the laptop screen, frozen in the fluorescent light of a storage room in Inglewood, on footage recorded 3 days before the man filming it was killed. He does not deny the transaction number. He does not say it wasn't him. He stands behind Megan with the expression of a man watching a door he believed permanently closed swing open in the room he is standing in. Megan pauses the video. She turns around in her chair. Did you know what was in those containers when you signed? Ji-wook's answer arrives after a silence that carries its own meaning. Not when I signed. 3 words, arranged in a way that makes the real question louder than anything spoken. Not when he signed, which means at some point after, he discovered the truth. What he did in the hours and days following that discovery, whether his silence allowed the operation to survive 1 day longer, whether the route that eventually led to her father's death remained functional because of a choice Ji-wook made somewhere between knowing and acting, those questions fill the kitchen with a pressure that neither of them can release. Before we hear the rest, one question, one word is all I need from you. How do you think Megan should feel right now, standing in that kitchen? Not what she should do, how she should feel. Drop that one word in the comments. Because this moment right here is one that a lot of people know from the inside, and your word might say exactly what someone else has been carrying without language for it. Megan reaches forward and presses play. Johnny is close to the end. His eyes shift briefly off camera, then return to the lens. One more thing, he says. If Han Ji-wook tells you he didn't know, ask him about the woman in the red coat. Megan looks at the screen. In the reflection at the very edge of the frame, barely visible, angled deliberately away from the lens as though she knows precisely where the camera is pointed, stands a Korean woman in a red coat. Upright, still, aware. Megan pauses the video. She looks at Ji-wook. His eyes are already locked on the screen. The tension in his jaw is the same expression he carries when something true is costing him something he cannot afford to keep paying. You know her, Megan says. That is my mother, Ji-wook says. Hye-rin, the woman he was raised to believe abandoned the family. The voice on Taekyu's recording. The woman who fed Johnny information from inside the organization. Alive, deliberate, completely unaccounted for since the night Johnny died. Ji-wook does not reach for his phone. He does not call Taekyu. He does not move toward the door, or reach for the authority that has defined every room he has entered for the past 15 years. For the first time inside this house, he stands before her without anything between himself and whatever comes next. Megan stands from the chair. She walks to the kitchen door. She closes it. She turns the lock herself, with her own hand, and faces the room. She sets the laptop on the marble island between them. Start with the woman in the red coat, she says. And don't stop until I have every piece of it. Ji-wook looks at her across the island. The man she came here to destroy is the only person left standing who can tell her the complete truth about the father she lost. The first enemy has fallen. The deeper war has only begun. And Megan Patrick, who walked through that front door with grief in her chest and a flash drive in her bag, and 11 weeks of carefully constructed lies, is standing in this man's kitchen at dawn, with the truth between them and something far more complicated underneath it, deciding whether love can survive knowing everything. This time, the locked door did not keep the danger out. It kept the truth in. If this story moved something in you, if Megan's courage, Johnny's sacrifice, or even the impossible position Ji-wook is standing in right now hit somewhere real, then this channel is exactly where you belong. Hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell right now so you never miss a new chapter when it drops. Every story told here is built to remind you that real strength, real love, and real truth always find their way to the surface no matter how long they are buried. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Share this with someone who needs a story that doesn't flinch. Your words in that comment section might be the exact thing someone else needed to read today. The next story is coming. Don't miss it.